being on the reservation, my understanding of who I was as a gay teenager at the time was very accepting. Going into college in Phoenix, being away from the reservation for the first time, I had a person called me a faggot. And it really troubled me, really exposed me to kind of the negativity towards a community that, being from Navajo, is considered sacred.
Hi there, and welcome to I Changed My Mind, the series that normalizes what the changing mind looks like. I'm Brooke Siebold, a filmmaker, a storyteller, and a deep believer in our capacity to grow. This is one of 5 episodes we're producing in partnership with PBS National, the largest organization in the U.S. dedicated to supporting, educating, and advocating for LGBTQ+ people and those who love them. Sometimes changing your mind goes beyond rethinking an idea or bridging a divide. It can be about changing how you see yourself, maybe even taking on a responsibility you once believed wasn't yours, which is exactly what happened in today's story. Elton had a very specific plan for his life: to leave the Navajo reservation where he was born, go to college, and eventually to law school. But when his brother was diagnosed with HIV, everything changed. Elton witnessed the deep stigma his brother faced within their community. And when his brother later passed, the grief reshaped Elton's purpose. He moved into advocacy and leadership, and today, as the inaugural executive director of the Two-Spirit and Native LGBTQ+ Center for Equity, he works to erase stigma and bring healing around gender, sexuality, and HIV/AIDS in Indigenous communities. Through losing his brother, Elton discovered that the fight against stigma wasn't someone else's, it was his.
My name is Elton Noswood, and I changed my mind about what it means to stand up for my community.
Elton, I'm just so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. Why don't we start at the very beginning? I'm curious what it was like growing up on the Navajo reservation.
Thank you, Brooke. I'm very honored to be a part of this conversation. First and foremost, I'd like to formally introduce myself. Yat e she'eya Elton Noswood in Shia. Toahane and Shantabahe Bashichin, Nakaidane Edashache, Tetnazani Edashanella, Diaya Dene Inshle. What I said is greetings, hello. My name is Elton Noswood. I am of the Near to the Water clan, born for the Edgewater clan. My maternal grandfather's clans of the Mexican people, and my paternal grandfather's clans of the Tango people. This is how I am Navajo. I was very fortunate to grow up on the Navajo reservation. Up till the age of 4, I lived with my maternal grandparents who raised me in a traditional way of life. That meant that English was not my first language. We were housed in a hogan, our traditional dwelling, with no running water, with no electricity. My maternal grandmother kind of knew that I had a special essence to me. She recognized who I was as a Nugle person. And Nugle, if we translate that term to English, it means the changing one, a person with special traits, having feminine and masculine entities. And so I was raised understanding that and understanding who I was.
What was it like being out on the reservation?
I got along with everyone. I got along with the jocks, if you will. I got along with the people who came from the deep res. I didn't have any bullying or any name calling that was derogatory. And
I know you had an older brother, and he was also out as gay at that time, right?
I did have a dear older brother, Elton Noswood, who was 9 years older than I was. He was openly gay, was very flamboyant in a way. My coming out was just kind of following in his footsteps.
What was your relationship like with your brother?
We really had a strong bond. That experience of kind of being that little queen brother, as they would call me, kind of just tagging along with them and then being shooed away.
And I know that when you were on the reservation, it was a dream of yours to leave it. Can you kind of talk about what you had seen for your future and then how that shifted when you kind of left the reservation?
Going to school on the reservation, you're kind of just encouraged to go to college. I was the first in my family to go to college. Getting ready to graduate, I had a mentor of mine ask me if I was going to go to graduate school. And I said, I thought I'm done. I didn't realize and understand that there was advanced degrees available for me. And I was the first in my family to go to graduate school and attended UCLA.
I know you had mentioned the culture shock of coming from the reservation and then entering into an entirely new environment. What was that transition like for you?
It was tough, to be honest. And it wasn't until I went to college that I realized that there was more of a perspective that now I know what is called homophobia, right? Or transphobia. And it made me think, wow, the experience I had on the res, was it protective? It took me about a good year to kind of get my footing into being off the reservation. I end up seeking out the American Indian Student Association. Getting that support of other peers was kind of saving for me because they were experiencing the same thing.
What shifted around your brother's diagnosis and what that looked like?
When I was an undergrad, my brother became ill. We didn't really know what it was. My mother was a nurse, fortunately, and she had encouraged him to go to the hospital and ultimately get tested. And he did come back with an HIV positive diagnosis.
Your brother, when he was sick, he was on the reservation, right? And what were some of the stigmas that you witnessed around his experience?
With the HIV/AIDS epidemic was just a lack of education on the transmission of HIV. The stigma is still there. People still think you can contract HIV with saliva, with just human-to-human contact. I think some of the stigma, particularly for my brother, was just the lack of confidentiality. People would see him going to the clinic and be like, oh, he's going to the HIV office, right? People felt like he may have deserved it, that it was a gay disease. And unfortunately or fortunately, only him and my mother knew. They did not disclose to our family, to anyone, for quite a period of time. And it wasn't until I was in my first year in graduate school that he disclosed that he was HIV positive, and ultimately complications to HIV and AIDS took his life. It was a struggle for me because I was away from home and that I couldn't be there for him. I couldn't be there for my mother. So I had a sense of self-guilt as well. But I was able to attend his services. It was very difficult. And I did not want to return to Los Angeles, but I felt he would have wanted me to.
Thank you for sharing that with me, Elton. I'm so sorry for your loss. And I'm curious because I know, you had sort of this vision for your life, which is to leave the reservation and become a lawyer. And then there's this big shift. I know that HIV advocacy work wasn't necessarily what you saw as your lane. So can you tell me a bit about that shift of that sort of picking up that torch and recognizing that this is your fight?
Having this path of wanting to go into the legal field, wanting to become a lawyer, and then having this shift into the work of public health, I think a part of that was spiritual. After my brother passed, I had the opportunity to apply for a job in the HIV prevention field. I thought it was the fate of the Creator. There's a reason of why you're going to be doing this work in public health. And I felt my brother's presence when I accepted the job. And I felt that it was my calling to educate our community about HIV. I really felt that experience allowed me not only to feel a sense of relief from the guilt that I had, but then also it helped me do the work that I did in remembrance of my brother.
Can you just talk a little bit about that feeling, that realization of, oh, this is exactly where I'm meant to be and this is the work I'm meant to do?
I think it was the next calling that I had is kind of a culmination of all the work and the lived experience I've been able to do and share. And then just kind of holding that space as a two-spirit individual. And I say that not only as a label and an identity, but as a responsibility and a cultural role. The understanding of a two-spirit individual is to have a feminine and a masculine spirit in one's entity, but beyond that, serve the role for your community. Be the knowledge keeper for your community. So I think being in this role now has really allowed me to find myself being a leader, being an activist, being an advocate. Rather than being in a courtroom, I'm out in the community.
And I know you also perform drag. How does that factor into your advocacy work, or does it?
Yeah, actually it does. I do have a drag persona, Eartha Quake. I think Indigenous drag has become something that is entertaining, but also a way of storytelling, meaning that when Eartha performs, there's a political message, there's a cultural message, talking of issues of the boarding school experience, homophobia, wearing traditional regalia. So we incorporate that into our drag.
Do you think your brother ever would have expected you to take this path?
Yes, I think he would have. And I think he looks down and is very proud of the work that I'm doing.